So we have said early on that this kind of love is not the kind you feel. It's the kind you decide. This is how I'm going to be. And you don't ask questions. You just say, man, I'm going to love you whether you want it or not, whether you like it or not. I'm going to seek your highest good. And that's what we even do for our enemies. And that's hard to imagine, that kind of love. And that's what we're working on. Do we ever achieve that and say, man, I've got it made? No, we're still working on it. And we still have trouble with it. I've loved my wife for 100 years, but sometimes I don't love her so much. Well, it's not that feeling that you feel. It's a decision that you make. And you decide when you say, I do, I'm going to love you. All right, that was unscripted. I'll get back on script. So we're looking at, of course, the greatest commandment is to love one another, to love God first and love each other second, love one another, love your neighbor. I'll get there in a minute, as yourself. And, of course, we're looking at the words in the love chapter, 1 Corinthians 13. And we are down to the insisting self. And we got started with this last week. Remember, this is talking about being selfish. Love does not insist on its own way. It's not rude. It does not seek its own. And sometimes we say, my way or the highway. And yeah, we have that feeling sometimes. And different ways of translating that word. This is a good idea. If you're unsure about a word, just check different translations. And I mentioned last week Bible Hub. You can see all the different translations of one verse on one page. And so you can kind of get a really good sense of different ways people have interpreted and translated this one word. And anyway, that's interesting. So we talked about self-interest and disciplined thinking. We've got to change how we think. If we keep service in our mind, uppermost, foremost, my goal here is not to get my own way, but it's to serve. That's a different mindset, is it not? We looked at the mind of Christ. Jesus Christ came not to be served, but to serve. He came to wash feet. He came to help others. When we get caught up in problems, we focus on ourselves. And when we focus on ourselves, we're going to have more problems. They just keep getting worse. And we need to get off of that. We need to be focusing on others. How can I serve others? And that's going to be the bottom line on just a lot of these. Christ was one of self-denial. Paul called to service. And again, that's going to be the bottom line. We treat others the way we would like others to treat us, whether they treat us that way or not. We want to get even, do we not? And that's in the next lesson. We would rather get even. And yeah, we are. So just for a minute, let's go through these semi-quickly. The mind of man, what is our motivation? Well, we want money to buy things. And if you're at my stage in life, you may have too many things. We got too much stuff around here, and it's hard to get rid of stuff. I don't know. Are you guys like that? I've got stuff just piled around. I know in my life I will never use that, but I want to keep it. Why do we do that? I don't know. Yeah, I do that. I want it just in case. I might need that someday. So it's caused by greed. It's caused, I want a higher salary so I can buy more stuff, a better car, the boat, whatever goes along with prestige. I want that. Sometimes it is special interest. It's my stuff as opposed to your stuff. And you see this with kids, it's very obvious. With adults, we want to make it less obvious. And, oh no, this is a very important thing that I'm working on. Well, it's your stuff, okay? And, well, I've been working on this for years. Well, guess what? Your stuff as opposed to my stuff. And we see that in politics today. Your special interest as opposed to my special interest. And how many days has the government been shut down because one side won't accept the ideals, the principles of the other side? They're worried about their own special interest. And, they can say, oh, no, we're being altruistic about this. Well, both sides say that, one side or the other. And, oh, no, we've got higher principles. We're not just quibbling about minor things. Guess what? Yeah, maybe you are. And it's hard for us to see what is the other person talking about. What are they coming from? And that's hard, I know. We want to climb the ladder at any success. And, I want to move up. I want to get the higher pay, more prestige. I want all the things that go along with that. Well, what would you not do at work to move up the ladder? If you had a store, what would you not sell? Would you sell cigarettes? Would you sell alcohol? Would you sell illicit drugs, drugs that were harmful? In some countries, slavery is legal. Would you sell people? Where would you draw your line if you owned a store? I don't think I could sell a lot of that. Where would you draw your line if you were the owner of a store? So those are things you think about. What's our motives for service? And here we go, Ephesians 4:28, let the thief no longer steal, but rather let him labor, doing honest work with his hands, so that he may be able to give to those in need. Well, that's a very obvious thing. If I'm a thief before I become a Christian, can I just not carry on my work? That's my trade. Well, no, you have to stop that. And that's very obvious. But what if I just kind of cheat on my income tax a little bit before I'm a Christian? Can I continue to do that after I'm a Christian? What if I just fudge on this just a little bit? That doesn't sound so bad if you call it, I'm fudging a little bit. Do people even say that anymore? I don't know. We call it a white lie. That makes it not as bad as a black lie. I don't know why does that make that? It's just a little lie. I'm just fudging on this number in my accounting just a little bit. And, that's what people do. Well, if you are a Christian, can you do that? Well, our tendency is always to be selfish. Our tendency is to always err on my side of the ledger rather than on somebody else's side of the ledger. And so that's what this is all about, the insisting self. And yeah, these are hard questions. These are questions, how do I want to live my life? We do this in our family, do we not? With husbands and wives. I always see things my way, and your way is just crazy. Do you ever say that? Yeah. We just don't understand the other person's point of view. Yeah, these are hard. A selfish husband refuses to consider his wife's needs, her wants, her desires. He may only see her as a person to satisfy his own desires. Is she an important part of any decision that he makes? Do you take each other into account when you make a big decision? Or do you say, no, it's mine, I'm going to do it my way. That's my money and that's your money, and buddy, they are not going to cross. Think about it, guys. That's selfish. And of course, the wife, of course, has her ways of getting her way, and you know how that works. Parents are in a position of authority in the home, but they can ignore their children's wants and desires. Of course, you can't let the children run the house, or it's going to be chaos. Sometimes parents try to be friends rather than parents. No, parents are still in charge, and in theory, you are the wiser one of the two groups, and you'll steer things the right way. The insisting self, guess what? You will fail, and I will fail. And that's, you just have to pick yourself up and try again. You cannot, think, well, I've got this licked. Selfishness will rear its ugly head. No matter how thoroughly we examine our lives, we will fail, and we will always miss something. We don't become discouraged. We ask ourselves, what is truly mine? Is there anything that you have in your life that wasn't given to you? Well, I went out and earned this myself. It's mine. Who gave you the health to earn that? Who gave you the health to even go to work? Who gave you a healthy mind that you could go do that? Some people, they don't have a healthy mind. They don't have a healthy body. They can't earn that. And so you count your healthy body, your healthy mind as a blessing. And that's something that you got from the Lord. So what do we have? Well, you have truly what you have, exactly what you came into the world with, and that's nothing. You're not going to take anything with you when you go. And so that's that. Anyway, we looked at this quote last week just very briefly, but look at it again. Selfishness is not only contrary to the basic nature of Christianity, but it is everlastingly and infinitely futile. Think about that. In the big picture, does it help us to be selfish? Does it help me to have more stuff at my house? I've saw a guy on TV, he'd won the lottery, and he was millions of dollars or whatever. And he says, I can only wear one hat. I can only wear one suit of clothes at a time. And, all this money is not helping me at all, basically, is what he's saying. And, yeah, it might be nice, but what? Ultimately, is it mine? Well, of course not. So the insisting self is that chapter. So that actually went longer than I thought it might. So the next chapter is the irritation explosion, is that one. And we've looked at love is kind and patient, and it is not envious, boastful, proud, rude, self-seeking, and here we get to easily angered. You notice love is more not things than it is things. Have you noticed that? What does that tell us? Don't do that. Don't do these things. So in the story, in the book, his story is he and his wife would both get home after a stressful day, and they had learned from experience they don't talk to each other for like 30 minutes. They have 30 minutes where they just kind of calm down and decompress, and there's silence there for 30 minutes. Now, I don't know about your house. At my house, Angie doesn't want you to talk to her like the first 30 minutes, all right? I can take her a cup of coffee and set it in very quietly where she is, and that's a good thing. But you don't start a big conversation when you first wake up. And, that's just the way different people are. Love is not irritable. And you learn what makes the other person irritable. You don't do that. Okay? It's very simple. And yeah, it's hard. So this word here is to actually blow up. And, we use that expression, he blew up. You blow your top in anger. And that is actually this word. The word is paroxysm. And that is a Greek word, but it's also basically an anglicized form of the Greek word. So have you ever heard the word paroxysm? Paroxysms of anger? Nobody? All right. I like words, so anyway. Yeah, it's a real English word. You can look that one up. I asked Alexa what it meant, and she knew. So it's a real word, paroxysm. And basically, it's just to blow up. And sometimes you can have paroxysms that are good things, to blow up in a good way, and sometimes it's a bad thing. And we'll talk about the difference. So the easily provoked idea. You get exasperated. Love is not become exasperated. And this is also used of God. God finally reaches a point where he is exasperated with people. And if you've read through the Bible, in the Old Testament, there is a time when God says, all right, I've had enough. And that's the end of it. Then judgment will come. And one day, the rains came and the floods came and God had had enough. Well, one day, God will have enough, and it won't be water but fire. God will say, all right, that's enough. I've had enough. And that will be the end of the world. And we can see that in the big picture. We don't much see it when it's me and my stuff. And so that's this word. It's used of provoking God in Deuteronomy 9, in Hebrews 10:24. We'll be looking at those in a minute. So that's all that. Not easily provoked, not irritable, not easily angered are the main ways to translate that. Sudden violent action or emotion. And this is an anglicized form of the Greek word. You look at the Greek word, it's pronounced just basically the same, paroxysm. All right, and we've already talked about his story. He's quiet for a while. Love is not irritable. Well, what is a paroxysm? It's used 3 other times other than 1 Corinthians 13. Let's look at Acts 17:16. Here it is used of Paul when he is in Athens. And this says, while Paul was waiting for them at Athens, his spirit was provoked. There's the word. His spirit was provoked within him, and he saw the city was full of idols. So Paul had gone on ahead. If you remember your Acts, Paul had gone ahead to Athens. Well, Athens, what was there? Every sort of god with a little g, every sort of god and idol you can imagine. There were thousands of different deities that people would actually worship. It's hard for us to imagine worshiping you remember all the Greek gods? They would worship those guys. And at the time Paul was there, they were building this huge temple to Zeus. And of course, Zeus is the major deity for the Greeks at that time. And they were building this huge temple. And, you just think how much money went into that and all the other shrines. You couldn't throw a rock without hitting a shrine to some god. And they ran out of gods to worship. And what did Paul see when he was there? One more shrine for who? You know, the unknown God, right? And that may have been the final straw that broke the camel's back. And he explodes here. This word paroxysm is there. He was provoked. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, here, it's a good thing. So the word itself can go either way, good or bad. So here he's being provoked for a good reason. Man, we need to talk about the God that you don't know. We need to talk about this unknown God. And, you know, he was angry. He was, I'm sure he was upset. You imagine coming from Jerusalem, where everything is one God. We don't have any statues, because we learned that lesson in Babylon. You don't bow down to statues. You don't bow down to idols. And, you know, they had to learn that lesson the hard way. The Jews never did do that as a group after the Babylonian captivity. Now here comes Paul, thousands of idols, thousands of different gods that they worshiped. Not just one God, monotheism like you had in Jerusalem, but now we've got thousands. We've got gods of the sky, the field, the air, the house, even the threshold of your house. Just crazy things. They would have, if you wanted to get something done, you had to appease all these different gods that were over that area to get something done. It's kind of like red tape today in the government. It's hard to think about like that. We don't know if he is moved by anger or grief or an impulse to share Christ to these doomed pagans, but he stood up in the Areopagus and he preached with that, and that was a good thing. All right, go down to Hebrews 10:24 and 25, and that's another place that this word is used. Let us consider how to stir up, and that's our word, consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. And in my translation, the word day is capitalized. That means it's not just any day, it's the day. And that's going to be the day of judgment, of course. But here, the Hebrew writer is saying, we've got people that are being lethargic and lazy, and they're losing interest. The ones that are still here, we need to look around and consider, how can we stir up one another? And there's that word, it's getting them out of this lethargy. It's getting them out of this laziness, doldrums, whatever you want to say. They need to explode, is the idea. We need to stir them up, is the word there. And that is not just for the elders, not just for the preachers, not just for all the important people. It's for me. It's for every member to do. And I need to encourage you. You need to encourage me. We need to look around and say, man, who is not here this morning? And we need to reach out to them. How can I stir them up? And that's what that word is. Stir up. We need to jolt each other into action. Imagine going up to somebody with 2 wires and, buddy, we're going to shock you and get you going again. How would we do that for an erring Christian? How would we do that for a Christian that, man, they just kind of miss in and not involved? They're not here. Attendance on Sunday morning is no guarantee that you're an active, good, close follower of Christ. But it tells you something. It does tell us, you're trying, you're working at it. If you're not here, what does that tell us? Well, maybe a problem. So that's kind of how that works. Jolt each other. This explosion is a good and necessary thing. Sometimes, if I'm half asleep and something's going on, my wife might need to say, "Ron, the house is on fire." That's a jolt, okay? Then it wakes you up and it gets you into action. Sometimes I need that and, get me going again. I remember one time we were driving toward a storm. It was black and it looked like dark clouds coming down. She finally said, "Ron, where are you going?" Because I was just going to go on through like guys do sometimes. Well, we turned around and did the sensible thing and went a different way. And we need that sometimes. Acts 15:39. And here is Paul and Barnabas. And let's read that, beginning in verse 39, Acts 15:39. There arose a sharp disagreement. That's our word, paroxysm. A sharp disagreement. They blew up. So they separated from each other. Barnabas took Mark with him and sailed away to Cyprus. But Paul chose Silas and departed, having been having been commended by the brothers to the grace of the Lord. So that's our word, sharp disagreement or contention between Paul and Barnabas about the qualifications of John Mark. And you notice there was a sharp contention. They separated ways, but they did not stop worshiping the Lord. They continued to be active. They continued to do missionary work. And what do we know about John Mark later on? Later on, Paul is going to write, "Send John Mark, for he is useful to me." He is useful to me. So it wasn't like, "I'm never going to talk to you again," as we would rather do. Is it not? I'm never going to do anything with them again. I've had this sharp disagreement, and they were jerks or whatever, and I'm never going to work with them again. What did they do? Well, they separated but continued to work, and that's how that goes. So our projectors seem to have a life of their own this morning, and they've kind of been coming and going. So it's got something to do with that switch up there in the crow's nest, but it's the same thing that was happening to that projector, I think. I'm not sure. Anyway, that's that. So if it happens later, don't be surprised. They exploded at one another, but what? They continued to work for the Lord. And that's what we have to do. Even if you say, "Man, I can't work with that person," they're choosing the wrong thing. And there's no right or wrong on a lot of things. Should John Mark have continued? Well, he turned back before, so we shouldn't give him another chance. That's what he's going to do. Well, it was a legitimate complaint, a legitimate thought. Well, there's no right or wrong, biblically speaking. It's a judgment call. And isn't that the way things work so often? It's not a biblical thing. It's not doctrine. It's just a judgment call. And one's on one side and one's on the other side. All right, which paroxysms are good and which ones are bad? Which time is blowing up a good thing and which time is blowing up a bad thing? The bad times are when self is in the center of it. When I'm focused on me, that's when it's wrong. All right? When Jesus turned over the tables in the temple, was he angry? I'd say so. This is my Father's house, and you've made it a den of thieves. I'd say he was angry. What does the Bible say? Be angry and sin not. What's the difference? Are you angry for yourself, for your selfish reasons? Are you angry for another? Here's Jesus being angry on behalf of his Father. This is what you've done to my Father's house. You could be angry, this is what you're hurting children when you do this. Man, very obvious. We need to take some action. And you can fill in the blank. Healthy anger is not necessarily wrong. Ephesians 4:26 and 27. There it is. Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger, and give no opportunity to the devil. I sent my daughter a meme this week. Memes actually teach some good things sometimes. It's got this guy, he's very disgruntled, and he's angry. And he says, I know the Bible says not to let the sun go down on your wrath, but I've got 2 minutes and I'm going to use them. Well, come on. And it's hard. I know it's hard. And, you always hear couples going to bed without speaking. What's the longest you've ever gone as a couple without speaking? Have you gone 24 hours? Have you gone a week without speaking? Don't do it. It's not worth it. I know that's also hard. Anger in the right place can be a virtuous thing when it's for someone else. This anger explosion is acceptable in some areas. I'm protecting someone else. I'm exposing rampant evil. I'm defending an important principle. And I'm got self out of it. And that's hard. 1 Corinthians 13:5, Paul isn't concerned with the other kinds of explosions. Now he's talking about love for one another. Irritations between people versus irritations toward things. And that's that. So 1 Corinthians 13:5, he's talking about the bad kind of explosions and not the good kind. Irritations are harmful when they are self-centered. And here your ego is what is getting involved. I get exasperated while they're just being slow and taking up my time on this line, and I'm fed up with all of it. Yeah, we get like that. This guy pulled in front of me. I had a guy pull out in front of me while I was on the highway, and he went 15 miles an hour and went 1 block and turned off again. He couldn't have waited 5 seconds until I got past and then pulled out and gone slow and turned right again. He had to go out in front of me. I was not happy. That was an explosion that day. Yeah. That's a hard thing. If I am loving and I set my heart for concern for others, their faults do not exasperate me. If it's my grandchildren, their faults do not exasperate me. Well, I don't know. They kind of get to where they do sometimes now. Sometimes they just, what are you doing? Yeah, and you get like that. Their slowness, their rudeness, their undesirable characteristic traits, ineffective or inefficiency, their talkativeness, whatever irritates you. Think about their side. How are they feeling? Where are they coming from? What's going on in their life? That's what you must do. If we are absorbed by concern for others, my concern for others should be larger than my irritation at their faults. Oh boy. Example of football coach, he's well known. He talks about this in the book. The coach is well known for many paroxysms He blows up all the time. Well, people loved him. Why? Because his main interest was not, it wasn't personal. He was worried about, making the football team better. And, we can understand that with the football coach. Do we understand it with our spouse, with our friend? Do we accept other people when they blow up? Do we seek to say, where are they coming from? And yeah, that's hard. Somebody blows up at me, what's my tendency to do? I want to blow up back at them. I want to blow up too. And then everybody's gone off the hinges, right? And that's ego gets in the way. Getting out of hand. Examples, a salesman lashing out at people for no apparent reason. Driver's rage. We used to talk about going postal. I don't think they say that much anymore. I haven't heard it in a while. Here is sin in haste, repent at leisure. And, that's, man, I'm sorry I did that. If we would just held our temper a while longer, we wouldn't have had to do all this stuff to fix that. And how many times have husbands and wives, they're angry, they've blown up, and they say things in reality, if they were thinking straight, they would never say. I don't love you, I don't think I ever loved you, and I wish I'd never married you. Well, you can say you're sorry all you want, but that's not going to fix it. All right? And yeah, that's hard. You need to stop before you blow up and think about things. What's the long-term effect of me saying that? And I can say I'm sorry 1,000 times, and I wish I hadn't said that. I said that in anger, but it's still been said. And you think they'll ever forget that? Probably not. They might forgive you for that, but it's always going to be in the back of their mind. All right, sin in haste, repent at leisure. All right, you get the idea. At a certain point, our goal is not just to win, but to hurt the other person. So the last part of this chapter is how do we fix this? The remaining part is how to help us deal with temptation to forget love and explode. First, we want to look at the triggering circumstances. What triggers you? Maybe you have to have some silence when you get home from work. You just know what works. Continuing pressures at work mess up our family life, our home life. We may be eaten up by guilt or uncompleted tasks. You got all this stuff hanging over you, stuff you have to take care of. There we go. Triggering circumstances. You may have bad health. If something hurts all the time, it's hard to forget about that and not lash out when somebody's there. I'm sure nurses have to deal with this all the time. Somebody's in pain, they may explode in anger for just a small thing. And so your health may be a problem. The author received a critical complaint about one of his sermons. The writer didn't want him to preach it. He missed the point entirely. He later learned the writer was suffering a terminal illness, and it was actually the disease that had written the letter. So, think about where they're coming from, what's going on in their life before you respond. Second, remind ourselves of the call to service. That's really going to be how we get out of so many things. I'm lonely. What's the answer to loneliness? Service. I'm got anxiety. What's the answer? Answer to anxiety? It's service. When you're focused on yourself, what's going to be the answer to that? It's going to be service for someone else. You got to get out of your own head and focus on serving other people. That is good mental health. That is good for you as a Christian. Other problems can increase this. Then we need to remind ourselves of the call to service. Third, we need to keep a long-range view of life. What's it going to be about this in a year? Wish you remember that I said that? Will they remember that I blew up over this really small thing? Should we paint this blue or should we paint it green? Well, in the big picture, that's a small thing. 100 years from now, this house is going to be old and torn down, and it won't matter. And I'll be in eternity. And in eternity, will you worry if something's blue or green? I don't think so. Think about it in the big picture, and that's hard to do. We want to focus on me and here and now, and that's kind of that idea. Fourth, we need to pray. Always the bottom line. When we have things going on in our life, we need to bring the Father in on everything. Think about, we talked about grandchildren a minute ago. You see in your grandchildren and you're hearing their first words or whatever, you hang on their every word, do you not? That's how God hears us. He longs to hear from you. And he wants you to pray. Even about things you may not think it's that important. He wants to hear about that. He wants to hear about everything in your life. Wow. Who would imagine that the God that made the heavens and the earth would be interested in anything I have to say? That's hard to imagine that. What universe is that common? Well, only one. All right. So then extinguishing irritation, explosions. We must recognize despite our best efforts, we will sometimes fail. And I say sometimes, and I mean a lot. We fail here a lot. Rather than give up, we should recognize none of us have achieved perfection here in this area. We must be willing subjects. If you're working with other people, what's the first criteria? Well, it really helps if they want help. If they don't think they have a problem, it's really hard to work with them. And so we need to be people that see ourselves as we are, see ourselves as the Lord sees us, and say, yep, I'm Ron Vick, and I've got a problem. I'm Ron Vick, and I'm an addict to being selfish, whatever it is. And yeah, we need to see ourselves as we are, willing subjects. What was the cause? What can I do to prevent this in the future? Look within rather than the outburst. Here's a quote from some guy I've never heard of, and Alexa says there's several guys with this name, so I don't know which one this is from. But here's a quote. It says, as the spark which falls into the sea hurts not the sea, but is itself extinguished. So an evil thing befalling a loving soul will be extinguished without disquietude. All right, think about that for a minute. If you have a fire and a spark goes into the sea, is it going to hurt the sea? Well, no, it's big and it's going to take care of that spark real easy. If someone explodes around me, I should be like that sea, absorbing that and be unchanged. And that's our goal, is it not? Just like that sea, it will be extinguished without disquietude. When was the last time you used the word disquietude in a sentence? Never. Anyway, it should be extinguished. Well, Lord willing, next time we will be looking at love is not resentful. Love doesn't keep account of wrongs. Love doesn't keep tallies. This is your wrong and my wrong. You did this 54 times, and I'm keeping score. Lord willing, we will talk about that next week. Thank you, guys.